When you ask people to pinpoint the most important aspect of their lives, many of us, a great many of us, will give the same answer: family. So, in a very real way, one of the most valuable gifts we could ever give is the gift of family in the form of foster care or adoption. There's a distinct group of people doing exactly this. But what's surprising is how many of this group say that family isn't actually the most important thing in their lives. Their faith is.
This is Signs of the Times Radio with Kent Kingston.
Well, it's fantastic to be here. I'm on the phone with James Standish from the United States, from on the East Coast there, in the Washington, D.C. sort of area. And James, thanks so much for being part of Signs of the Times Radio today.
It's great to be interviewed, Kent, and it's great to chat with you.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, James, I understand that right now you're very much head over heels in love with a new child who is coming to your family, your son. Please tell us about it. Tell us how it all happened.
Well, sure. And we have two daughters. The oldest is just turned 15, and our youngest daughter is 12. And this last July, we added a third child to our family. His name is Bo Yi. He is from Langzhou in China originally, and he is 5 years old. And we filled out all the paperwork, and man, oh man, here I am. I'm a dad of 3 kids now. So it's a big change. People often ask me, so does he speak English? And the answer to that is, well, no. He grew up for 5 years in China. He speaks Mandarin. Obviously, now he's been with us a few months. He's just integrated into our family beautifully, and he is a absolutely delightful child and has brought a lot of joy into our family. We just love him.
Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, look, I remember when you lived here in Australia, you were working here, a colleague of mine for a while, and you were looking into adoption as an option for your family. What was you've already got 2 great kids, 2 incredible daughters. What was the motivation to go ahead for you and to adopt a third child?
Well, Ken, it goes back to actually before I was married. When I was 26, I just finished my MBA, and my dad was working in Singapore at the time for ADRA. And ADRA had development projects in Vietnam, and he invited me to come and see him, and we went traveling to Vietnam together. And one of the projects that ADRA had in Vietnam was a nutrition program at orphanages.
Right.
So I was 26. I was a young guy. I couldn't care less about children. Wasn't my scene at all. Walked into this orphanage, and there were the most beautiful kids who all of a sudden were looking to me for attention. I wasn't used to that. It just wasn't on my radar screen at all. I'm the youngest child in my family, so I never grew up around, kids looking up to me or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was just, it just really struck me. Here are these beautiful kids, right? And they want adult attention. And so it was later on that summer, and I'm sorry I'm using a northern, summer seasons, but it's just easier that way.
Yep.
I actually went down to New Zealand, where it was winter, of course,
yep.
And my wife and I became engaged. And when we got married, we talked about children, and both of us agreed that, maybe we should adopt. We both have cousins who are adopted. She has 2 cousins who are adopted. I had 3 cousins who are adopted. And so, and I sort of talked about this experience that I had in Vietnam, and I just seen these beautiful kids. So time went on, and, one thing led to another, as can sometimes happen. And by the time that we were ready to have children, adopting wasn't an option for us because we were Australian citizens living in the United States. So we couldn't adopt in the United States because we weren't American citizens. We couldn't adopt in Australia because we were living in the United States. And besides, it's a nice thing, if you can, to have children, if that's a possibility. So we prayed about it, and we said, look, we'll see. If it happens, it happens. I was a relatively old father. I was 36 for my first child, which is older than most people.
Yeah.
And so anyway, one thing led to another, and bam, we were pregnant in no time flat. And our first child was born. Just amazing experience. The whole story within itself. She was born very premature, and so it was quite a traumatic beginning to life. And we're just so proud of the person she's become. And then 3 years later, we had a second child. We felt like we still had this sort of idea, or this dream, like there are kids out there, they need a family. Maybe we'll add to our family. And as you mentioned, a few years back, we moved back to Australia because both my wife and I are dual citizens. We're U.S. and Australian citizens. And we worked there for 5 years. And one of the things we thought was, now's the time if we're going to adopt, because I turned 50, and it's like a point at which you think, well, if I wait too much longer, it's I can't really have the energy and everything else.
Yeah, it's now or never.
It's now or never. So anyway, we started looking at it in the Australian context, and we actually went through the whole training thing, and there's a whole procedure in New South Wales that you can go through. But what we were told there was, if we wanted to adopt domestically, it was almost impossible for us. What we could do is long-term fostering, which we're 100% in favor of that. That's great. But we knew that we might move internationally because we had previously. And once you start doing fostering, long-term fostering, you can't take kids overseas typically, and so it just gets very, very complicated for a family like ours. And then when we looked at international adoption, we were told that it could take up to 7 years to adopt.
Oh, and, wow.
Australia makes it very, very hard. They've really made it very difficult for families like mine, essentially, to give children a permanent home and a mom and a dad and all the things that go into it. So actually, one of the things that fed into our decision to move back to the United States, it wasn't the only thing, but one of the things that fed into it was my wife and I said, well, what do we want to do? I turned 50. She was close to that. What's our plan for the remainder of our life? What are the things that we wanted to do that we haven't done? All those sorts of things, not to be dramatic about it, not a bucket list or anything morbid like that, but just simply, what's our plan? And so we decided to move back here. And as soon as we got here, we started working with an adoption agency. We said, we don't care what gender, we don't care what race, we don't care what nationality, just we have space in our hearts and our family for another child. And they said, basically, for our profile, our age, etc., China's the place to go. Initially, I assumed it was going to be a girl because you always hear about Chinese girls. But apparently, everyone has heard that. And Americans, at least, have this idea that they're going to adopt a Chinese girl. So Chinese girls are sort of under more demand. I don't know.
Oh, wow. There you go.
And so so they said, you think about a boy. And so obviously we did. Because we already have two children, one of the things that I wanted was the opportunity to host the child beforehand, to just see how our kids handled it, whether the child who we brought over, would want to be our child, right? I mean, these are complicated. You're doing something complicated here, right?
Yeah.
So we were fortunate in that China had a program that we could bring over a child that we were matched with for a couple weeks in the summer and just come and stay with us. Obviously, you have to go through all the security checks and the background checks and meet with a social worker and criminal background checks, all that stuff to make sure that things are safe, which we're 100%. Even have to have the fire marshal come around to your house to make sure that you've got your fire stuff, your fire alarms all there.
Wow.
I mean, we've been vetted 150 ways. You have to provide financial records. I mean, everything, right? So we're matched with this little boy. The adoption agency called us and said, look, we have a little girl whose family who was going to host her this summer have pulled out. I don't know why they pulled out, but sometimes this can happen, I suppose. And would you host her? And so we went from hosting one child
as well.
Yes, as well. So we went from hosting one child to hosting two children. And maybe I'll just tell you this. It's just a little vignette, but I really believe that God was working in this because it's quite a lot. Just to be very blunt, it's quite expensive bringing children over in this way. And so we were at the post box, and my wife said, "Are you sure we want to do two kids? This is doubles the cost, obviously."
Yeah.
And we prayed about it, and we said, "Yeah, okay, we'll do that." we put the letter in the post box, and we were just walking up, and my wife said, how are we going to manage with these kids? We don't have car seats anymore. They only come with one set of clothes. You got to get clothes. You got to get car seats. We have no kids' toys, not for that age anymore. And we were literally having this conversation, Ken. We turned the corner, okay? There was this family having a garage sale. It's quite a nice neighborhood. What do you know? We went up there and said, it had a lot of kids stuff. They said, yeah, we have a little boy and we have a little girl.
No way.
And we're getting rid of all their stuff. And I literally had 2 carloads of stuff by the time I was finished there. For $100, I had everything I needed for those kids.
Wow. That's incredible.
Okay.
And I can hear that now. You just retelling the story is bringing up a lot of emotion for you, just remembering that.
Ken, some people don't believe there's God, right? Some people don't believe in providence. They don't believe anyone cares for anything. It's a cold universe where people are just thrown out there and there's no one who cares. I'm just telling you, you can believe what you want. I cannot believe that after just having prayed about it together, that we come across that. It's just incredible. The perfect thing. And we're still using stuff from that garage sale because we have enough clothes for our son for a long time. So, but the story isn't a fairy tale. It gets more complicated. So let me keep on going.
Sure.
So at the end of the summer, the kids had to go home to China, back to the orphanage, which of course was very hard for them and much harder for us, really.
Yeah.
So we had a family meeting. I asked my girls, well, what should we do? We can adopt. Which child should we adopt? While the kids were here, we also had people come and visit and meet the little girl because, the families who might adopt her and so forth. And by the end of her time here, nobody had stepped up to the plate, essentially. Nobody had decided to adopt her. So we had a family meeting and we went back and forth. And my girl said, Dad, we've got to adopt them both.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It's like, whoa. I mean, as you know, Kent, I like nice cars. I did not envisage myself driving a minivan for the rest of my life and paying for, in the U.S. college, it's expensive, paying for college for 4 kids. And, you start sort of thinking it through, private school fees. Holy cow. I mean, how are we going to do this? And just the cost of the adoption is like a second mortgage, right?
Yeah.
So we prayed about it again and we said, look, it's a family. We said, we're going to adopt both of these beautiful kids. They're just absolutely wonderful. We're going to adopt them both. So we went on vacation and, don't hate me for this, but we went to Sardinia, which is, an island in the Mediterranean. Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of an indulgent vacation, but I got good deals. Don't worry, I didn't spend too much. And so we went to Sardinia and we went to the beach one day when we were there. They have really nice beaches in Sardinia. It's a beautiful place. There's a little Wi-Fi hotspot by a cafe, so we just pulled up our Wi-Fi. And what do you know? We got an email from the adoption agency that said, China's changed their rules. You can no longer adopt both children. You can only adopt one. And we're just like, come on, that can't be right? Just like a month ago, they said we could adopt both. In the interim, we put in the paperwork, and now we can only adopt one. But it was a change, and this was on all the adoption forums and so forth. The Chinese government just changed their rules. So then we were in this painful process of, well, which child do we adopt?
Oh, my goodness, that would have been heartbreaking.
It was gut wrenching, to be honest, and sleepless nights because it's a big deal. You're really making a decision for a child's future in a very profound way, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's between being in an orphanage in a well-run orphanage. I'm not bagging out the orphanage or anything like that. The people who work there seem to be very kind and nice and gentle and loving and all that. But it's between living in an orphanage, being one of a whole group of children, and having a mom and dad and having a world of opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, one thing led to another, and we kind of did an analysis of it all. And one of the things we realized was that the little girl would have a better chance of being adopted. We'd fallen in love with both kids. It was very tough. But in the end, we decided to adopt a little boy.
Do you know what happened to the little girl? Has she found a family now?
Well, this is the story. I felt very guilty about it, to be honest.
Oh yeah, you would.
Because whatever you do, you feel like you took on an obligation, and you're failing, right? You failed the little kid who put her trust in you. But when I got back, I made a little video of her time with us, and the adoption agency kept on working with families, and guess what? a beautiful family. I mean, a really beautiful family, Catholic family from Ohio, were interested in adopting, contacted me, and we spent a lot of time going back and forth, and they decided to adopt her.
Oh, fantastic.
We started at different times and with the paperwork, but our schedule for pickup of our children was exactly the same time. So their family and our family were all in Langzhou, China, which is a northwestern city in China, at exactly the same time. We met in China, and we were able to see the little girl. They were able to see us, and the two children were able to interact because they were in the same orphanage, so they knew each other very well. We went to Guangzhou, where you finalized the American paperwork. We were there together. And this last summer, we took a road trip out to Chicago from Washington, D.C., and we were able to stop in Columbus, Ohio, where they live, and the kids were able to see each other. So we stayed in contact. We've become friends with the family. We hope that the kids will be able to be in contact for the rest of their lives. And every time I see a picture of that little girl just living a fabulous life out in Ohio with art classes and ballet classes and this and that and the other, all the things that a little girl could ever possibly hope for, it just makes me feel so happy.
Wow, that is really fantastic, James. And you say something really interesting in your article, that when you were there in China, and you say it's the happiest place on earth, because it certainly was for you and your family. When you're there sort of finalizing the adoption and everything, you said there are a number of other families there who were there doing the same thing as you were, and you found that a lot of them had Christian backgrounds of various flavors. I mean, sometimes you hear this expression, the Christian adoption movement or the evangelical adoption movement. What is going on with that? Like, why are Christians, and is it American Christians in particular, why are they so involved in this and so interested?
Every single family we got to know, and we got to know quite a few families during this process, every single one of them were Christians. Now, some of them were evangelicals, some of them were Catholic, some of them were mainline Protestants. I'm an Adventist myself, Seventh-day Adventist. So we're all sort of coming from different traditions within the general Christian community. But this is the thing that struck me, and that is every single one of the families that I met was serious about their faith. It wasn't a joke, right? You could just, there's a lot of people who are sort of cultural Christians. These people, every single one that I got into a conversation, like one family we went out to dinner with, and they said, do you mind if we say sort of a grace over the food? And they were a Catholic family from Massachusetts. So the father is an engineer at Google up there. And like I said, every single one of the families, and that sort of begs the question. And some cynics have said, look at these Christians, they're out there. This is their idea of how to convert people. They're going to adopt the world. And in the end, that's their church growth model. I got to tell you, if you're looking for a church growth model, that is the most inefficient, most expensive model you could possibly imagine. That is not why people are doing this. I can tell you from the people I've met, and I can tell you from my own experience. It's a very simple thing.
So why are they? Why are they then? If that's not the reason, if it's not about evangelizing the world, what is the reason?
Look, it's a very simple thing. I can tell you from our family and talking to other families. One, we knew we had a loving family, right? Like, we got a good thing going. It's not a perfect family. We get upset with each other. We have our ups and downs. Everything that goes on in a regular family we've got. But I'll tell you, love is the core. And we said, we've got something so good, we can share it. So we have love that we can share. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, we are so materially blessed, Ken. I mean, most of us who live in Australia or the United States, we don't feel rich, right? We don't feel wealthy. We don't feel, we look at sort of people who are much richer than us and say they're rich and we're just average. By world standards, Ken, you and I have traveled a bit. I've been all over Asia. I grew up in Asia, been through the Pacific, et cetera, through Africa and so forth. I can just tell you, by world standards, we are all living in that top little percent of the world, right?
Yeah.
We have so much opportunity, so much material blessing. And if we don't share that, right, it's a hollowness in our lives. We wanted to share.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, that's because you're trying to, I've read this article subsequent, actually, when I was preparing an article for Science magazine. I hadn't actually read much about this beforehand.
Yeah.
These cynics, and they go, oh, you're trying to earn your way to heaven. I can just tell you, it's not that we're trying to earn our way to heaven. And as I said to my kids before we decided to do the adoption, I said, you're not bad people if you say this just isn't going to work for us.
Yeah, sure.
In our family, there's a million ways to help people. There's a million things you can do. And my children sort of responded to me like I was sort of out of touch. Like, oh, of course we want to do this, Dad. We just want to do it.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this in our world generally, and I've even fallen victim to this myself. You see somebody who's doing something that's really kind of warms your heart, but somehow it makes you feel also a little bit uncomfortable. And so it's a temptation to sort of impugn their motives, right? Yeah. Oh, they're just doing that, or what they're doing, that doesn't change the world. It's just like one kid. How's that going to change the problems of the world? They've got 7 billion people, and they adopted one kid. Big deal. And in a way that's correct, right? Like, I understand our goal wasn't to sort of make some grand social statement or whatever. Our goal was just to give one kid a better life. We were able to give 2 kids a better life. And by so doing it, our lives are so much richer and better. This little guy has come into our lives, and I can't tell you just what a joy he is. Just a beautiful, beautiful kid.
Wow, that's incredible. And I believe, James, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a number of people who have chosen to adopt have actually said to adoption agencies, we understand that the kids who are in most need of a family and who are most difficult to place in adoptive families are children with special needs, kids with disabilities of some kind. And they're actually deliberately asking, for those kids to be placed with their family. I mean, wow. I mean, that's to me, that's just taking it to the next level. Have you seen that? Have you come across that?
Yes, and it's a beautiful thing. And without getting into any great detail about ups and downs or ins and outs, the families who we were traveling with and et cetera, their children do have some special needs. And there you have it, beautiful, wonderful, amazing kids who are just doing beautifully with their adopted families. In fact, I think, all the kids who were associated with the group that I was with, who we got to know well, the kids had something or another, right? Without getting into detail of it.
Sure.
And so what?
Oh, well, I don't know, because for me, James, it's really confronting because on the one hand, we have people talking about genetic engineering and designer babies and, wow, imagine if you could make your own baby and he would be, or she would be, tall and intelligent and incredibly successful. You
mean just like you and me, right?
Well, that's right. But then on the other hand, we have families saying, no, we don't want to design a baby and to spend our 6-figure sums on that. We would rather, spend our money on getting a child from a disadvantaged background in a difficult country who has special needs. To me, it just seems like polar opposites way of thinking, and there's just something transcendent about it from my point of view, I guess. Yeah.
And I just want to give a perspective because I assume that many of your listeners are going to be from Australia. And we have a friend back in Australia who's done exactly the same thing, and in some ways, much more difficult than us because their child has some cognitive issues. Yeah. A beautiful child, and every time I saw her with that child, it was just like you don't want to do something on a whim or on a feeling because having a child isn't just an emotional thing. It's a commitment, and love is a decision, and we understand all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I can tell you there's something that spoke to me in a very profound way, seeing her with her child and just the love, unconditional love, and to see that child just bloom, right? To just blossom. And it's just an amazing thing. And I also want to just clarify one thing. Just because long-term fostering wasn't for us because of our unique family situation, I hope that there are listeners who think about it in the Australian context, because there are our foster roles in Australia have just exploded because of all the social problems that we have and drinking and drugs and all the other stuff that goes on.
There's a huge need for foster families in a lot of places in Australia. I understand, but particularly for not the cute little kids, but the older kids are particularly difficult to place. So there is totally a need there. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I guess what I want to encourage your listeners are, even if you're an old guy like me, I'm 53 now, Kent, I'm an old man. What are you going to do with your life, right? What's your legacy? What's your plan? What's special? What could you give? And if you can give a child a home, it's a big deal.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. It's absolutely life-changing for your family and for that child. No, look,
it is, and it's not easy. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to gloss over stuff. It takes a commitment. It takes, it's a lifetime of commitment, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I can just tell you from my personal experience, and it's not just mine, because the other adoptive families who went through this with us are all, we're writing back and forth, and everyone is just amazed at how this experience has obviously enriched the child's life, but more than that, it's changed the whole family in a positive, good, healthy way. The thing you can only do when you take what you have and you give it away, right?
Oh, yeah,
Love is the only thing that when we give it away, it grows, right? We can divide it up, and the more you give, the more there is. And this is just a beautiful thing. And my wife and I, we don't regret it even an ounce. My girls just love their little brother. And I'll just give you a little vignette. Yesterday, my son and I went to pick up my girls who had to stay late at school because they were in a musical program thing. And he saw his big sisters and just went running and leapt into their arms. And it's just magic, man.
Wow.
That's just, wow.
Yeah. Huh? What an absolutely beautiful thing to see. Now, we are pretty much out of time, James, but just before we go, I just wanted you to give us just a quick outline. What's planned for Christmas there for you and your family?
Well, we're talking just a couple weeks before Christmas, and in about 3 days, the whole family, we're all jumping on a plane in Washington, flying to LA, changing planes and flying into Sydney. And the whole family will be down in Australia with our extended family. We're going to have a get-together at the Wahroonga Adventist Church, where my grandparents went, my mother went, and I went as a child, and a picnic at Wahroonga Park, which is near there, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. We're just going to have a great time. And of course, our son has met his grandparents, but he doesn't quite have a concept that we're a family that has friends and family here in the U.S., but we also have friends and family in a whole different world down there. And I think it's going to be fabulous for him. I think he's going to love it.
That sounds really good. You'll have to check out this month's Signs magazine, because apart from your article, which I definitely would encourage our listeners to check out. It's actually online. It's called the happiest place on earth, I think. And
it is, and it's about it's about a place in Guangzhou. And if you want to know what the happiest place on earth is, read the article.
Check it out. Yeah,
that's it.
But we also have another article there called Upside Down Christmas, which is giving a few hints about how to have an authentic Aussie and Kiwi Christmas, in the summery Christmas conditions there. So perhaps you should check that out, James, for a couple of hints about how to do it right once you get down here.
Thank you, Ken. I'll check it out, man.
All right. Hey, thanks so much for your time, James. Really appreciate it. And all the best for Christmas and the new year. And may God bless your little family there.
Thanks so much, Ken. Same for yours, man.
Today's episode was based on an article appearing in this month's Signs of the Times magazine. A subscription is just $26 for 11 issues a year. To find out more, visit signsofthetimes.org.au. Signs of the Times has been published in Australia since 1886 and is proudly produced by Adventist Media.
This is an Adventist Media podcast.